Welcome to the Level Up Lean podcast.
Lovely.
So today I'm joined by James Elliot. I'm going to probably get this wrong, correct me. So
Okay.
I'm going to list off a few things that I know about you from my stalking.
Okay.
So ex-military.
Correct.
I'll go from the top. Father.
Correct.
Yeah. Ex-military.
Yeah.
Guinness World Record holder.
Times 3 Guinness World Records, times 5 world records.
We'll get stuck into that. Wait,
Okay.
how does that work? Well, we'll get stuck into that.
Okay.
Author.
Yeah.
Psychotherapist.
Yeah.
And keen Brazilian jiu-jitsuer.
Keen, keen but very amateur Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I get choked a lot.
Okay, fine. Is there anything else?
Yeah, probably, but no,
go with
that's
that,
it. We'll go with that. Yeah.
So yeah, massive thanks for coming on
My
today.
pleasure,
Really
mate.
appreciate
Honestly.
it. So I've honestly been so excited since you agreed to do this, for a number of reasons.
Okay.
But partly because I actually don't know a lot about you and we've not really spoken, and that's deliberate, I think. Because we spoke about it and I was like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't want to talk to you, and you were like, don't ask me anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's because I'm personally very intrigued about you, what you do now. There's a lot of relation, like a lot of it relates to what I do, I think. So I'm massively interested in this and to find out a bit more about you and what you do. So we're going to start and then we'll see what happens.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm not going to go all the way back. I want to go back to army days, military to start with.
Yeah,
and
okay,
we'll go
cool.
from there. So what I want to know first off, why did you join the military? When?
Yeah.
And what did you go into?
So I joined in 2006 and I was in and out of homelessness. Didn't have any like work, cash in hand working on building sites, but in and out of homelessness. Lots of like real violence, like lots of drugs, lots of, stuff that you do the very best you can with the information that you've got. That's true of 99% of the world's population. Nobody wakes up in the morning to think, I'm going to be the bad guy today. And a series of bad decisions takes you down a really dark way. And so, yeah, I was in and out of this, life was terrible. I think back on it and I think about, stealing dog ends out of ashtrays, and pubs outside and fighting people and nicking stuff and running into shops and running back out, trying to get involved, trying to create an element of stability, it falling away, more drugs, more violence, stuff that, we spent a lot of time in my own therapy talking about, those days. It was really interesting with a therapist that I had, whereby she went, spoke about everything. I said, do you want to talk about child abuse? I want to talk about the army, Afghanistan? And she went, I want to talk about the times you were homeless. A 17-year-old boy with nowhere to sleep. That's a rough place to be. And that must have had a really detrimental effect on you and your psyche. And yeah, I remember going through a breakup like 2 years ago now, nearly. And the first thought I had was, I'm going to be fucking homeless again. And that just being so overwhelmingly terrifying that actually is one of the few times in my adult life where I have actually cried. And there's nothing wrong with crying. Charlotte Bronte says, never be ashamed of crying never be ashamed of crying, for from the first moment that you are born, it is a sign that you are alive. Like you have these experiences, these emotions, you express that. That's a beautiful thing. But I remember it's been the first time, in a long time that I really cried. And I wasn't crying because the relationship was over. I was crying because, oh my God, I'm going to be homeless again. Like I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have anywhere to stay. Something that I was severely reprimanded for by my army mates who were like, shut up. Like you will come and live with us. Like, what's the matter with you? You're mad.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, like Jim, that will never happen to you. But there's that overwhelming fear. So yeah, I was in and out of this like absolute state of poverty, like absolute poverty, when you're stealing food because you need to eat, not because you want, I'm not going and stealing sweets. I'm going and stealing tins of beans. Like there's a distinct difference in that type of crime. Something I talk about a lot quite often where there's crime, there's actually two victims. If everyone is doing the very best that they can with the information that they've got, quite often the person committing the crime is in a fairly desperate position. That's why they're having to do it. Like I'm not stealing food. I'm not committing theft because I'm a scumbag. I'm committing theft because I wanted to eat and things. Life was tough. Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, there's a legal defense, quotus necessarium est licit, which is what is necessary is legal. So that was the state I was in. So when an individual's basic needs like food, safety, shelter, when that's not being met and they have to make a decision to meet those basic needs, is that really a choice? People talk about, lots of examples of this. Like say, for example, a woman who goes into the sex trade, they go, well, it's her choice to do that. Is it? If her basic needs aren't being met, we all have to do what we have to do to put food on the table, to keep a roof over our head. Hence why poverty and crime go hand in hand. There's a really great line from the new Flash movie where Batman gets the lasso of truth wrapped around his arm, and he says, I'm one of the world's richest men. If I really wanted to end crime, I would just end poverty. And he goes, and takes that off. It's absolutely true. Yeah. So I was committing all this crime. I was in and out of this crime. I had nothing. And that was trauma. Like, there was trauma on those days. And I needed to join the army. Like, I needed to get out of where I was, of what I was doing. And I actually went to go join up before, but then like bottled it, and then came back and said, at 18, I need to join. And
that was your decision to do all that?
Feed me, clothe me.
Right, okay.
And yeah, the guy said, where's your dad? And I went, prison. He's like, what's your relationship like with your family? And I was like, terrible. And he went, you'll join the airborne. So I went to the army and did like this fitness test, and we're like, yeah, happy days. And you do all this kind of silliness wearing a coloured bib. And they're like, red number 6. I was like, yeah, pass, and off you go back to the recruitment office that you go to. And the guy was like, yeah, how soon can you start? How soon can you get me in? And yeah, and
that was it.
That was that. Originally, I was going to go to I was thinking about maybe joining, because we talked about a trade and talked about engineers, but I was straight into basic training, and I was like, that's not what I want. Like airborne. They're like, okay, cool. So I went to a unit called 7 Power RHA, who were based up in Colchester, and I did the entirety of my regular service with them. And then I did 2 years with the reserve. So I wound up doing 14 years. So I did 12 years in the regulars with 7 Power RHA, and then 2 years with 4th Battalion Parachute Regiment as a reserve. Yeah.
Enjoy it?
I'm not a veteran who's left the army who's going to slag it off. I absolutely adored my time. I met some of the best people in the world. And where I was to where I am, that's because of the army. Like, the army takes low socioeconomic demographic men and gives them identity and purpose, fits their basic needs. Quite often talk about, it's one of the things that guys struggle with when they come out the other end is you have the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So your basic needs, your physiological needs, safety and security and purpose and identity is all filled for you by the army. Your self-actualization, they put you there so you can perform as a soldier. So whenever a soldier goes on a course and there's not accommodation, or there's not food isn't sorted, there are people whose job it is in the army to sort those things out. Because a soldier needs to be a state of self-actualization, needs to be at the very top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so that he can perform, can perform as a soldier. The moment that's gone, because they've now left the military, that then becomes a problem, because no one's filling that hierarchy of needs for them anymore. Yeah. Their basic needs are no longer being met. They don't have a sense of purpose or identity. Food, shelter, all of this stuff. Like,
it's all taken care of.
What on earth is council tax? Welcome to the real world. You're in your 30s and all of a sudden you're paying council tax. You never
buy a house as well.
Buy a house.
Yeah.
How do I feed myself?
Yeah.
How do I actually look after myself? Like, where are all of my mates, and why am I not constantly hanging out with them? So
Did you struggle with that coming
out? Yeah. So when I got out, I was in a relationship with a girl who lived near Birmingham, and so just south of Birmingham, in a town called Redditch, it was just a terrible place. I'm sorry if anyone who listens to this lives in Redditch. I'm sure they can admit it. They go, yeah, it's a shithole. So I went to Redditch, and there was no rugby. There was no, it was a real small town with a real small town mentality. And my daughter and my friends and my rugby club are the other side of the country in Colchester. And I am just not where I should be with the people that I should be doing it with, doing the things I'm not where I should be, doing the things I should be with the people I should be doing it with. I just wasn't there. And so this massive sense of identity was super challenged. And quite often I have this a lot with clients where they're not sure of their identity. They start thinking about their mortality, because you feel like your life is being wasted. So you start developing this real fear of death. You start becoming really anxious. You become really overwhelmed. And I'm I'm studying and becoming a psychotherapist and setting my business up, and I'm doing my master's degree in war and psychiatry, and people think that's great purpose, but I wasn't doing it with the people I should be doing it with. Where's my daughter? Where's my friends? And that creates a huge amount of emotional distress for me. So when that relationship fell apart, the instantaneous response was, oh, I'm going to be homeless. I'm gonna, oh my God, I'm gonna go back to that, bursting into tears and going, what do I do? I'm so helpless. And we often see traumatic experiences and helplessness go hand in hand. So that's why a lot of people who go through really traumatic experiences where they've been rejected by people who should have cared for them, they then, as adults, become very standoffish towards receiving help because they don't ever want to be in that state where they rely on someone else, because helplessness and trauma are very often linked. So you become standoffish towards that help, and all of a sudden, like that. And I was like, oh my God. And I think when I said in a group chat, this has happened, I think in 2 hours I had 5 offers. Like, I've got a room, I've got a house, I've got a flat.
Okay.
Come stay with me, come stay with me, come stay with me. Don't worry about it. Like, come stay with me, it won't cost you anything. And I was like, wow. So I just packed everything that I could into my Corsa, drove to Colchester, crashed with a friend. She was great for like 3 months, got my place in town, and then moved into there and was like, done. Cool. And, now I live in the town, have my daughter every day. I played played some rugby since I come back to doing the jiu-jitsu.
So is that after the army with rugby?
So really, I mean, I played rugby before I joined the army for quite a while, and then in it. But whilst I was a parachuting instructor for a while, and whilst I was down at the parachute training school, there were some fantastic RAF rugby players. Like some of them had played professional rugby, and so they just kind of set up this sevens team that was done as a charitable thing for one of the lads who got really tragically injured on a parachute jump. And we were just playing like these like mega sevens tournaments, like Heart of Wales and Harpenden Sevens. And it was just an unbelievable experience. And that's where, I started doing the world records and stuff. And that's why I really got exposed to
touch on that there with the world records. So I've obviously stalked you a little bit.
Cool.
And it says world records. So I'll go a roundabout way of things.
Okay, cool.
Because I want to touch on your book as well.
Okay, cool.
The one thing that I didn't want to do is because I've got your book.
Okay.
I struggle to read because my attention just goes off and I can't shut it off. So I listen. So I've got you on Audible. And I started listening and I was like, oh shit, I'm making notes on everything here. And I don't want to make it. There was so much that I was like, I'm actually going to stop. So I will finish it. But I deliberately stopped at one point because there was just too much going on in my head.
Okay.
Maybe, I don't know what ADHD, but definitely overactive brain of some sort. So the Guinness World Records, you said you're going to be mentioning later on. What have you got a Guinness World Record in?
Okay.
Or records.
So I've got 5 world records. So the difference between Guinness and like general world records. So you can write off the Guinness and say, what's the world record for this?
Right.
And go and break the world record. And they go, cool, that's unofficial.
Okay.
To do it officially, everything has to be weighed, measured. You can actually pay for them to come along and witness it. So 5 world records. So the 2 unofficial ones were most amount bench press in a group of 12 in an hour. And I did that with FitX, the bodybuilding federation. So they had So they had a FitX meet and they said, listen, we're going to do this thing. We're going to do most amount bench pressed and then most amounts deadlifted.
In terms of weight or reps or?
So you say you got 100 kilogram on a bar and you do 10 reps, that's counted as 1,000 kilograms. So that's how the world record works. So we did. And the number isn't going to be exact, but it was something like 168. So a group of 12 of us, we did like 168,000 kilograms bench pressed in an hour. And then we did something like 250,000 deadlifted in an hour. Jesus. So like we got the world record, but unless you're willing to pay for Guinness to come up or have everything absolutely set up in a completely sterile environment, which they will, because they have to, because it's a professional body, they will pick apart. So you have to make sure it's absolutely rigid. So we did those 2. So those are my 2 unofficial. Now, my official world record it was the longest game of rugby sevens, and we played full contact rugby for 24 and a half hours. So roll-in subs, 2 teams of 12, sevens. That was tough. Like I lost all of my toenails, fractured a metatarsal.
What was the record before?
There wasn't one. But Guinness, if you go to Guinness, they will say you have to do a minimum of this.
Right, okay.
Which...
They just pluck a number out of the sky.
Well, I don't think they'd speak to someone who would say, well, we can't give them 15 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So let's make it tough. And then the decision was then made by the sort of the coach and captain to say, well, let's do it again in a year's time, but let's do 10s. So then we did the exact same thing. So full contact, 24 and a half hours, rugby 10s, which was disgusting. And then my final one, which is the tough one, which was
the tough one,
most amount of people eating fish and chips at one time.
Oh my God.
And how the
hell does that come
It was
about?
like 300 odd people. It was a social media campaign. Right. Let's get this together. Got it together. Got all these people eating fish and chips. And that was a tough one.
How much do you reckon it was just
300 odd people just
going for it.
It was all done like on Zoom. It was
Oh,
like,
wow.
so Guinness
okay.
were like really supportive of it, because, you know, it's just post sort of COVID-19 trying to get that,
That's so recent then.
yeah, idea of togetherness. So like lots of people got together and it was like 208
cool.
odd people all just sat there and they all had to just sign in.
Yeah.
And then sign in, and they all had to have their cameras on. You had to scroll through each screen, and Guinness were there like checking, and everyone just started eating their fish and chips.
Was that a new thing, or had that been done before?
No, I think that was a new thing. Yeah.
How'd you feel after that?
Yeah, peckish. No, it was delicious. I had fish and chips.
Yeah, nice.
It was very nice.
You got any other world records tied up?
Do you know what? There was a conversation with our mutual friend James Webb the other Sunday. A couple of things that we're thinking about. Yeah,
interesting, disgusting
things.
Yeah, nice. Well, we'll speak about that off camera.
Yeah,
I'm up for getting involved in something weird.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. That's cool. So then I mentioned your book.
Yeah.
Think Yourself Resilient. Why did you write a book?
Wow. Well, so I came out of I left the British Army, and when I left, I was the second in command of the British Army's mental resilience training team. All this knowledge about this new thing about resilience, and I kind of wanted to like quantify all of my knowledge on emotional resilience in some way, because I had all this information, like files and files and files and books and information and experiences that I had personally had around trauma, sporting achievement, and I thought I want to quantify. I want it all written down in a space. From starting writing to publishing date, it's been about 3 years. It took me about 3 years to write. I was approached by Thread, which is a part of Octopus Bookature, and I said, listen, well, I've actually finished that because I've actually tried to get everything that I've already got down. Here's this thing. And they're like, cool, start again. Like, start again, start afresh. That's cool, start again. So I sat down and wrote this thing out. And yeah, it was it was a really therapeutic, cathartic process.
I can see it being like that.
Yeah, because you had to write about things, and they would say, let's dig a little bit deeper into that. Tell us a little bit more about that trauma. And there were times when I say there's things I'm not happy to talk about. You know, I'm very open about the fact that, you know, my biological dad went to prison when I was like 12, 13. He was, you know, like crazy levels of abuse, you know, and I was with him on my own for a lot. My mum had left when I was 5. My mum had left, and my sister had gone with her. So I spent a lot of time with this guy, you know, and he would like take me on these he would go to like Europe, and he would take me with him as a little boy. So he would go and he would get the drugs, cocaine mainly, and hash, weirdly, but it was late 90s, so that's what they used to do, and pills and stuff like that. And then he would bring it across under the guise that it was luxury chocolates, and then hotels would buy it off of him, like top end hotels.
Knowing what it was.
Oh yeah, they would buy the gear off of him.
Right.
So luxury chocolates, but gear off him, okay. And that's how it was getting brought in, like the top end hotels. Wow. Yeah.
Because you said in your book, when your dad got arrested?
Yeah.
Estimated, was it like 2 million?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. It was so it was like millions and millions of pounds worth. Yeah, he was a proper gangster, and I mean, he used to take a lot of his own supply. Effectively, he got caught because he took so many of his own drugs, and he became so heavily addicted to his own cocaine that his life was like falling, and he was becoming irrational. And that is effectively what drew the attention of the taxman. The taxman is what caught him out, because he was throwing his money around. He was this coked off his nut, violent football hooliganism. So like, remember hooliganism? We don't really have it anymore. Yeah. But it existed back then. So he used to go to like Blackburn Rovers and Coventry City. He was a Red Devil. So like old school 90s teams, you know, old school 90s fights, scrapping all the time. And me taking me into a Coventry City pub, and then he like stands in this pub and on game day and undoes his jacket. He's got a Man United top on and having fucking having it out, like throwing fists in there. I'm 10. No, that was just
kind of normal.
That was his normalized behavior. Yeah. You know, he used to take so much coke that he would like pass out. I remember being able to like hold his eyelids open. Yeah, he was just like, he'd be able to hold his eyelids open. You were like 10 at the time, you know? And that was the environment. So like, I had no yardstick for what like positive masculine behavior really looked like, what it meant to be a man, what it meant to be a father. So I was just all over the shop. So like, the army has been an amazing organization and infrastructure for saying like, no, we don't do that shit.
Yeah.
Like a man is his word. You say you're going to do something, you do something. I have that
follow through.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
When a man's actions meet his words, that's what we call integrity.
Yeah.
And if you don't have integrity, you don't have a place here. You know, particularly like and you know, this is true really of all regiment. Every unit should have regimental pride, but particularly like in the airborne forces, we take great pride in being self-reliant, in being emotionally intelligent. And the people will scoff at that, of course they will, because like the army as an organization is not emotionally intelligent. But being able to manage your emotional state, not fall apart, stay in control, breathe, focus, get the job done, you know, and none of that stuff had ever been, you know, said to me.
It's all been learned through.
Yeah. Right, yeah. I actually went and met him when I was like 28. So I'm 35 now, so I went and met him when I was 28. So I went up to the business, somehow still existed. I think when he went to prison, his business.
Oh, really?
So when he went to prison, other people ran it for him, but there was like none of the drugs, but there was just this actual genuine infrastructure for getting luxury chocolates in from Europe. So actually like the business itself works. And the vans and employees and warehouses were all already there. They just take the drugs and the drug dealers out of it, but the infrastructure still exists. So when he came out of prison, he went back to it. And I'm not sure of like the details of who actually had ownership of it. From what he suggested, there had been so much investment from outsiders that he's not, you know, you're a glorified manager at this point. You don't really own your own company anymore. But anyway, I digress. And I went in and I was kind of directed up to the staff room. I kind of just dropped in. And yeah, I mean, the abuse was like horrendous, like really, really, really dark physical abuse. Like, you know, he used to beat my mum. And so I never really blame her for when she ran away. But he used to beat her. And then it was like when she went, it was my turn, you know? And so I went into this staff room and my heart is like getting me to punch through out. It's like the first time I jumped, it's like the first time I parachute, my heart is like punching out of my chest. And I've got all these mixed things like, am I just going to bang him out? What's he going to say? What's he going to do? Am I going to lose my temper? Am I going to stay calm? Am I going to regret anything I'm going to say? Trying to like staying all these questions in your head, this internalized, this introspective conversation is just horrific. And then there was this kind of, as he kind of steps into the doorway to my right, and I look over at him and there's like this frail old man with a lit cigarette in his hand. So this is like 7 years ago. So like, you're not supposed to be smoking inside for sure. And like there's food prep going on, but like, again, like that's like, you know, like he was like the prick's prick. And he goes, the first thing that came out of his mouth was, I don't regret what I've done to you, boy. I've made you strong. And then all of a sudden there's this thing that just washes over me and I go, you're the fucking problem.
Well, like a moment of realization.
Yeah, this epiphany, man, you're the problem. Like you're the problem.
Did you blame yourself then?
Oh, yeah, when a caregiver stops loving the child doesn't stop loving the caregiver, the child stops loving themselves. You don't love yourself. And I just started on this therapeutic journey. I've gone to therapy, like I was all over the shop, like in real, like internalized trauma. And I just remember thinking, fuck, you're the piece of shit.
That light bulb moment.
Yeah, like you're the piece of shit. Because I have a daughter. Like, I would never do that to her. Georgie was like 4 or 5 at the time. Like I'd never abuse my child the way you abused. And all that internalized hate and anger, you know, that expresses itself as, you know, being violent to other men, as being unable to manage your emotional state, as not being able to hold down romantic relationships because of emotional distancing, because of infidelities. Like all of this shit person behavior, just a reflection of the fact that I didn't love myself. I didn't fucking like myself. Yeah. And how is that, you know, how is that not understandable when you consider that the person that were the people that were supposed to show me, caregivers that were supposed to show me that love, weren't interested, would disappear, would just fob you off, would just say no, or indeed meet you with violence and abuse and anger. So you internalize that. I see that all the time with clients and selves, that if we don't understand why a person is doing something, we internalize it. So we assume it's about us. If you don't know why they're doing it, you're going to assume it's about you. I'm not saying therefore that we have to know everybody's individual story, but we have to understand is every single other person's attitudes, behavior and belief is a reflection of them.
You got to be empathetic towards that, haven't you?
Compassion is key. Be compassionate to other people. Nobody wakes up to be the bad guy. And so that was one of the hardest things for me in my therapeutic journey, was forgive him.
Yeah, okay.
Forgive him.
I bet that was a weight lifted off your shoulder. As soon as he said that and you had that realization, you're like,
Oh, it's you.
Yeah.
You're the piece of shit in all of this.
Yeah.
It's not anything to do with me. Like, you're the piece of shit.
Yeah.
And that sort of, yeah, it was like a light bulb moment. It was just like someone had just took a weight and lifted it off me. It's so weird. We went into his office, we had this conversation, and he said, this business, you can have it. You can have it and you can sell it and it's worth a couple of million and then that's yours. And I was like, no, I don't fucking want your money. I don't care. That's like and 5 minutes ago, we sit on like the other end of like the spectrum of what it means to be a man. Like, you're there and you're speaking like ill of like women, and it was just the shit he was coming out with, like this vile stuff that was just coming out of his mouth that just gave me the ick. It's just like, just one of those blokes who just gives me the ick. Get away from me. I don't want anything to do with you. See you just see you later. Done. Yeah.
So the resilience side of things then. I think, I don't know if you would class it as an umbrella term, would you? Because I think there's so many factors to it that I know what
massively.
the word is.
Yeah, no,
but at the same time, there's almost multiple meanings to it.
Right,
in a sense, and it might resonate different with different people, right?
Yeah, right, yeah.
In an elevator pitch.
Okay, yeah.
What is resilience?
To jump onto that, Carl Jung, so one of like Jungian psychiatry is considered like a top end of one of the early understandings of the human mind. He says something brilliant where he says, every individual that you meet is the exception to the rule. So there's not one psychological principle that can apply to everybody. And actually, like, the more you dig into people and you find out how multifaceted and nuanced and brilliant and subjective they are, that doesn't even apply to them. So resilience is a very, very subjective term. If I was, like you said, if I was to pitch it, I would say it would be learning the key psychological skills required to turn surviving into thriving. How can you take the situation that is happening to you into something that is happening for you?
Yeah. Okay.
And that's the key.
Yeah. Interesting. Because I guess it's something I'm realizing more and more as I work with more and more people. So I'm obviously an online fitness coach, but I'm realizing, well, no, not just now, for the last 3 years or so, I'm realizing it's much more than here's a training plan, go off and do it. I work with so many different people, with mums, with lads like me, and everyone's on their own thing. So the resilience side of thing is something that I'm probably there's only so much that I can do, and something from your book that I really liked, and I've got it written down in case I get it wrong. Okay. In fact, I'm going to get it up now just in case, but this resonated with me so much. So it's like you have, this is what you said in your book. Okay. I think, no, you
A person can drown in an ocean. That one.
No, it's to do with effort.
Okay, go on.
And like I'll read it just so I don't get it wrong. So as an individual, you have a personal responsibility for your own health, right? And then, so this is one thing that I always say to my clients is I can give them the complete framework of getting in shape, whatever their goal is to want to do. I can give them the accountability, the direction, the structure, but they have to put the effort in. And I say it when I have a call with someone, I was like, I can give you everything, but I can't do the work for you. You've got to go and do it yourself. So absolutely fine. Take people on board, whatever. But what I'm realizing more is the average, let's say I'm plucking someone out of thin air here. Let's say we've got a mum with 3 kids at home, got a job, whatever. How can you instill that resilience onto someone like that who has everyday challenges? Maybe one of their children's got sick. Maybe their husband's lost their job. Maybe they've lost their job. All these little speed bumps that they have, how can you help them to become more resilient, to not just giving up on themselves?
Right, yeah, for sure.
Because, like the practical things that you can, because I can always say like, oh, don't worry about it, move, like, you can try this, try that, but how can you actually build that resilience?
Well, first and foremost, there's the whole don't worry about it movement, the whole positive psychology thing. I do away with that. Like there's no space in resilience for positive psychology, because how are you ever supposed to make moves on where you are if you can't see where you are? Because you're constantly telling yourself, no, let's look on the bright side. No, let's look on the real side. Like, where are we?
It's too quick to go positive mental attitude, right?
Right, yeah.
Which is what I don't like, that I sometimes find myself saying, which is what I've been thinking about, which is why when I was listening to your book, I was like, shit, there's so much here.
Right, yeah. So what people often say is it is what it is. And I'm not a fan of it is what it is. Like, I hate it is what it is, because it opens the door to narcissism. It opens the door to helplessness, which we talked about. Helplessness and trauma often go hand in hand. When a person is stripped of their capability to survive a situation, they often find themselves traumatized by it because of how memory coding happens. But when someone therefore is making themselves helpless to a situation, they become a victim of it. They strip themselves of their own power. So rather than saying it is what it is, I teach people to say it is what I choose to make it. Theodore Roosevelt says, do what you can with what you have wherever you are. So what's the 1% wins? You're a single mum with 3 kids and one of them's got poor health and financially you're in a difficult situation. I'm not going to lie, positive visualization, you're not going to manifest your way out of that situation.
Yeah.
You can work your way out of it.
Yeah.
And that's incredibly challenging to do. But let's stop. What can you do with what you have?
Yeah.
What's the 1% win?
Yeah.
And it is like, I am in no way victim shaming. I am in no way I don't exist in a world of privilege. Like, I know that poverty. I know what it's like. It's incredibly challenging, but what's the 1% wins? What's the one thing you can do to make your life better today? What's the next 1%? What's the next 1%? A phrase I often used when I was in the military, which is left foot, right foot, your body will follow you. What's the one thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? I've got 30 miles to go. I'm never going to do 30 miles. No, but I can do the first step.
Yeah, exactly.
One
thing I tell myself, or that I have done, I try and keep things simple with what I do, but it's like Finding Nemo.
Right, yeah.
It's just keep swimming.
Just keep swimming.
It's the same sort
just
of
keep
thing,
swimming.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
But how it's so hard sometimes when someone's in that position where the world's ending for them, or they can't see like where they wanted to be with me on a weight loss journey or whatever it is. Like, I'm now getting better at putting questions onto them of like, okay, where can we, like, we'll strip this back. Let's just focus on this one thing. But even getting them to do that sometimes, maybe it's like you say, it just requires the effort. Right?
Yeah,
Someone's got to want to put that effort in.
There's a military statement, and everyone will have to forgive me for its crudeness because it's a military statement, so it's crude, which is you have to learn to piss with the dick that you've got.
Yeah.
If you like this positive psychology movement, like, you don't know what dick you've got because you're too busy trying to think positively about it. No. What is your dick? Like, what does it actually look like? And learn to piss with that. And that's resilience. Like, what can I do? What's the 1%? And it's like applicable in so many different forums and contexts. I've just been doing my master's. I've written. I'm just neatening up and editing my dissertation. And a 15,000 word dissertation starts with one word. And just write the next word. And there are times when I'm sat there and I'm going, I don't get it. I go, okay, sit down, just write another 100 words. Write another 100 words, then you can make yourself a brew. Okay, cool. I'm gonna write another 100 words. I've made my brew. Okay, cool. I'm gonna write another 200 words, and then I can have breakfast. 200 words, and I have breakfast. Okay, now I'm gonna write another 300 words. Oh, now I've written 600 words. Okay, cool. That's loads. That's enough for today. Right, tomorrow I'm gonna wake up. I'm gonna edit those. I'm gonna go through it. 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 It starts with just one word at a time. And that's true of absolutely everything. Stop looking at like the end state and going, oh, I'm going to aim for that. And this is why I reject SMART principles.
Okay.
When it comes to goal setting, I'm not a fan of SMART principles because it doesn't allow for life. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound goals. What happens when you break your leg?
Yeah.
And then everything falls apart around it. And the problem with the SMART goals, or the SMART principles 2 goals, is that you have to remain constantly motivated to do them. I don't teach that. I teach changing your identity to fit your outcome. So if a girl says, Tim, I want to get on stage, I want to be a wellness competitor. Okay, cool. Perfect. Well, then how does a wellness competitor eat? How do they sleep? How do they train? What do they wear? Who do they spend their time with? What media do they consume? And the more we repeat that, the more we can identify this process of neuroplasticity that occurs within the brain, which is where neurons realign themselves. So, and then once they've realigned, they become sealed in a thin layer of fat known as a myelin sheath. So this myelin sheath then secures them, so then it requires less effort to do. So now we're talking about forming an identity and making that identity habitual. Now you don't have to be motivated to go to the gym. The idea of not going to the gym creates distress. If I was to say to you, you're not going to go for the gym for the rest of the week, that would upset you. You'd be like, no, but I want to go. Because that's your identity. Not because it's a SMART goal, but because it's your identity. Yeah. So you have created this identity built around repetition of a series of positive habits that are ultimately going to get you to your end goal. You are a coach. There's no 2 ways about it. You live like a coach. You go out to Dubai and you spend your time like a coach. You live with other coaches. You create podcasts. This is your identity. This is who you are. And that is why you are successful at what you do. And the exact same principle with the Paralympic rowing team. Paralympic rowing team. How does a gold medalist, how do they sleep? How do they eat? How do they train? Who do they spend their time with? What are they doing? Challenge our identity. Chloe Pickford, IFBB Pro. She was calling herself the Chloe Pickford IFBB Pro 18 months before they gave her that card. Why? Because that's what we did. What is your identity and how does it fit your outcome?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
The one big battle I have, especially with people that are like maybe interested in what I do, is so often, and it's not me saying I don't get it, but I have people saying I'm not motivated at the moment. And that almost triggers me to a point when I'm like, you don't need to be motivated. Like that's going to come and go. And I'm almost glad. I had a call with one of my clients last week. He's like, I've lost all motivation. It's like, cool, let's jump on a call about it and let's chat about it. I was like, you don't need that motivation. I'm glad that they had that dip in it, because I'm making him realize like that's going to come and go all the time. I'm not always motivated to go to the gym. I'm not always motivated to cook a healthy meal or something, but you do it because of the delayed gratification side of things, and you know it's going to benefit you in the long run.
Right. Which is really interesting, that because there's a real interesting neurobiological process that we can now observe. Yeah. So what people have to understand about neurobiology, neuroscience, the information is changing with it. Science changes as the technology around science improves, right? So like, say for example, Galileo said the earth is round and everyone was like, no. So then you got high power telescope, pointed it on the horizon, on the shipping lanes, as ships approached. Someone will correct me, I'm sure. I think he was in Vienna. As ships approached, and he said, what's the first part of the ship that you see? Well, the top of the mast. So it must be round then. They must be coming over a curve. The technology improves, so the information improves. And that is what we are seeing happening with the brain. For example, fMRIs, functional MRIs. We can see interdepartmental communication between the brain far more clearly than we ever have been before. So our information around it changes. A really fascinating study that was done like last year into rats was radiologically charged atoms were given to rats that would then go to their in the food that they consumed, that would then go and we could see it then being absorbed in brain development and used in brain development. So you could then see these radiologically charged movements of molecules within rats' brains, so we could understand even better the communication that's happening between rats' brains. You go, wow, that's amazing. We're understanding how brains work in greater detail. So the science changes. As technology improves, science changes. So neurobiology and neuroscience is super interesting at the moment because like technology is forever improving. Yeah. So like we're forever seeing things in more detail. And what we can identify is there is a greater spike of dopamine in anticipation for reward than there is in receipt of it. Consider this, a child that unwraps a present at Christmas is like super excited as they're ripping the paper off. And unless it is a brand new Xbox or something, subjective, but a brand new Xbox, and then they go, like that. Unless it's that, they go, okay, cool. What's next? Yeah. Because that's the human brain. We crave the anticipation of reward. Because if we just crave the reward, we would constantly be seeking only ever instantaneous gratification. Pleasure, correct. Instantaneous gratification, that pleasure. Exactly that, mate. So consider this then. If cavemen only ever craved instantaneous pleasure, we would never have made it out of the cave. But actually it's that desire to work, to build, to grow, to develop that actually drives us. Now, what we do have to appreciate is that kind of two factors affect that quite severely. First and foremostly, early and sustained exposures of cortisol and genetic inheritance. So we are correctly now identifying the fact that a lot of addictive behaviors are actually genetically inherited, which is down to kind of your ability for your dopamine receptors to absorb, or indeed the number of dopamine receptors to absorb dopamine. So dopamine is our feel good. That's the rush of feel good you get, delayed gratification. So instantaneous gratification is eating a McDonald's. Delayed gratification is eating your chicken and rice, see where you are in 6 weeks' time. Like delayed gratification. Now, eating the McDonald's, either because of genetic inheritance, you are far more susceptible to addictive behaviors, so therefore you're far more likely to overeat because you just crave that, because the human brain craves dopamine, because we get rushes of dopamine when we have survival behaviors. Eating, sleeping, having sex, all of those things give us rushes of dopamine. So all of the things you can become addicted to are things that give you rushes of dopamine. So you become addicted to this, I need to, because you've got that I need that dopamine, because you're lacking in that. And the human brain craves it. Now, dopamine receptors are also suppressed and or damaged by cortisol. So traumatic experiences, particularly in the developmental stages of the brain, like in childhood, far, far greater, make people more susceptible to addictive behaviors. So alcoholism, drugs, violence, risk-taking behaviors, sex, all of those things are potentially going to create susceptibility to those negative behaviors. In a really fascinating study, the American Center for Disease Control did this like unbelievably interesting study into this, into how childhood trauma affects us later as adults. And they estimated they could reduce alcoholism, domestic violence, drug addiction by 75% by removing child abuse. If you could eradicate child abuse overnight, that generation would have 75% less domestic violence, alcoholism, drug addiction. That's crazy. Because you are so much more susceptible to it. Because your brain is craving dopamine, same as everyone else's brain. But if you've got a plethora of dopamine receptors within your brain, and you're going to have a healthy amount of reward for the behaviors that you do, and therefore a healthy amount of desire to delay that gratification to then achieve more and achieve more and achieve more. But if your brain is like, we just don't get the dopamine that we need, you're just going to seek it out. So yeah, you're right. But then how many body coaches, PTs, online, however it is, are going to say, what are your childhood experiences? Like, do you have early exposures of traumas? And what is trauma? And how do we define trauma?
I think there's an element of that, of like, if I was to go that deep with people, I'd be like, well, this isn't quite in my lane.
Correct. No, but
I can speak to you on a human level, but when it gets to that point of maybe there is something, I'll be like, I need to stay in my lane here.
Right. Okay, cool. So then myself and Ben wrote a course, and Ella McChrystal, who is just one of the most wonderful women that I know. We wrote a course about how to work with vulnerable clients, as in poor mental health, vulnerable clients. What is depression, anxiety? How does it express itself? What does it all mean? How to understand it? So we wrote that course for PTs and body coaches. Cool.
I didn't know that.
It's the only SIMSPA accredited course. Yeah. How many did you think we sold?
When did this come out then, by the way?
2-3 years ago.
I would not have a clue. 50.
0.
Oh, really?
No one would pay for it. $29.99. No one would pay for it. Why? Because a friend of mine said to me, you marketed it wrong. You marketed it wrong because you said, this will help your clients. This is good for your clients. This will benefit them. You didn't talk about how it's going to benefit the PT or body coach. Right. If you said, if you want to get more out of your clients, if you want your clients to achieve more for you, to stay with you for longer, to get on stage, to do the things that you want them to do, if you were to market it like that, more people will buy it. Right. So we're going to go away and we're going to have to remarket it. But that is, again, like a scathing indictment of human nature. Like, well, what's in it for me? Yeah. Well, you get to do more for people that you work with. Do I really care about that though? Huge organizations, you approach them and go, nah, you're right, thanks.
Yeah, that's a great niche to have, by the way.
Yeah.
If as a coach, if you have that side of it.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, look at the latest report suggesting that from the World Health Organization that half the world's population could potentially have a mental disorder by the time they've hit 75. I mean, that's mental. That's madness, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is an ever-growing problem, and that's for many, many multifaceted reasons. Like, why is mental health so poor? The main answer to that is capitalism. Like, we are expecting people to work more and more, work harder and harder, to donate more of their time, their life, their love, their emotional effort to a system whereby they have to make the bare minimum at the moment, because it is the bare minimum to survive. Like, call me old-fashioned, but someone shouldn't have to work a 60-hour week just to be able to afford to live. And so that constant pressure is a massive factor. We live in an ever alienating society. So people are forever on their own. And people feel that. Like, we're not designed to live how we live. So about 2.5 million years ago, we first emerged from the jungles of Central Africa, and we were tribal animals and instincts, and that drove our survival. About 200,000 years ago, we started fully developing prefrontal cortexes, and now we're looking at sending people to Mars, and now people work in booths with little laptops and
work on AI
and just find themselves increasingly isolated. But there's not running around and being part of a group and having that being human, developing those positive relationships and running around, and it's just not done. Seeking that tribe. Like, we all need a tribe. There's been this glamorization of the introvert, You could be introverted, but you still need to have tribe. You still need to have a social circle. Don't isolate yourself and celebrate that.
That's what you see on social media all the time now.
Oh, if I could live on an island with no Wi-Fi.
Celebrating it. That's a really good point. And you said about, what was it, to do with the positive mental attitude sort of movement.
Yeah.
That is part of the issue with what I do, I think, with social media.
Yeah, right.
All that's put in front of you is positive, positive, positive.
Yeah, right.
Which isn't, it's not real.
Right.
It's not real at all.
Yeah. You know, this individual accountability, particularly like when it comes to the clients who I work with who are really vulnerable, most of them live in poverty. So then, you know, the question is this individual accountability, it's heartbreaking. It absolutely is heartbreaking. But also, at what point does the system take accountability for putting people into this position in the first place? Ostracizing fathers from seeing their children, alienation of groups of people, this awful economic system whereby, you know, the poorest people carry the can and the elitist people make so much money. And this isn't, you know, I don't want to get on a political soapbox, but it's really hard to talk to people about individual accountability whereby they are once again being punished for being poor. You know, we see the sort of terrorizing of the working class in most social media and most media outlets now, because it's an easy win. You know, the demonization of the working class is something that we've observed for a long period of time. So poor mental health isn't always about individual accountability. It's, I'm really sorry, we live in a capitalist system. It's absolutely
can't win.
It's taking advantage of you.
Yeah.
And you know, that is a really, really, what can we do with what we've got?
Yeah, it comes back to that.
And
the same with it. So I just want to touch on it because, again, in your book, and to do with unlearning negative behavior patterns.
I
think this is huge to what I do. And the good thing, you've sort of touched on it as well with the brain. Well, you didn't quite say it, but I think I'm going to get this right. The brain's malleable, so
correct.
You can change.
So
you can change those. So how again, from a practical standpoint, and who I work with, maybe I can link this to sort of nutrition, maybe smoking, drinking, all these negative patterns potentially that impact our physical health, right? How can you start to change that?
Okay, so I think it's important that we cover why we have them. So basically what happens is the hippocampus, which is the emotional memory bank, begins to form the moment that we exit the womb. So what we're doing is we're learning about survival, and that survival example is set to us by our primary and secondary caregivers. So we are subconsciously absorbing the world around us to learn what survival behaviors are. So if they communicate through violence, that's what we're going to assume love is.
Yeah.
If they communicate through anger, we're going to assume that's what love is. We learn these behaviors, we absorb them, we adopt them, and that becomes the yardstick. So we also learn about health behaviors. Now, anyone who's ever said, oh my God, I'm turning into my mum, or oh my God, I'm turning into my dad, like, yes, you're designed to do that, because we're not designed to live how we're living now. We're designed to live how we lived 2.5 million years ago, which we would recreate the patterns of behavior from our elders, from our ancestors, from our caregivers, because that ensured survival. And that's the only thing we had going on, survival. We didn't have Tinder. We had survival. That was it. And fast forward to where we are now, we're observing that actually we have, as a race of people, particularly in Western society, began ingraining, effectively conditioning, really, really negative health behaviors like smoking, like drinking, like poor eating habits. And we are kind of learning this. So if you have caregivers who weren't necessarily health focused or health conscious, didn't really care about stuff like that, aware of it, then you're going to have adopted their attitudes, behaviors, and beliefs towards food. You know, like, we use it as an example because it was just so awful, but like the 90s heroin chic, that got absorbed, that got conditioned into girls, and their mums wanted to do that. Their mums were having black coffee and a cigarette for breakfast. Now they're going, well, that's what I want, because that's what I want to do. And so then that becomes ingrained in the brain. So the brain goes, right, but that's how we survive. If that's what she did, that's what he's doing, that's what we need to do. Okay, cool. So how do we then challenge that? Well, as a psychotherapist, I talk about taking a top-down approach. So the outer layer of the brain, the sort of cerebral cortex, that's our prefrontal cortex, that's where our conscious reasoning happens. So what we have to learn to do is learn to understand our body and its needs, and then consciously choose, even if it means going against what we're feeling, to do the right thing.
Right.
So our subconscious, our emotional memory bank, our fear generator, all of that stuff talks to us directly through our central nervous system. So the the subconscious, via something known as the hypothalamus, talks directly to the central nervous system. So you feel a certain way towards a food. Like if you put a burger in front of you and a bowl of salad, you can look at the burger and you go, and you get like little bits of excitement because your subconscious is going, release a little bit of adrenaline, release a little bit of serotonin. Yeah, even like a little bit of dopamine to go with that. You're going, oh, I want that, I want that, I want that. And you look at the salad and then there's a little bit of cortisol, stresses you. You go, oh, I don't really want that. Now that is going on constantly throughout the day. Okay, cool. But if you sit there and you go, I know consciously that the salad in this context, like there's no nuance provided to this context. This is just a very, very basic context, right? I'm not saying that you can't have burgers. There's people who are like, it's fine to have a burger if you're eating intuitively. Okay, cool. I am not going to go into the nuance of nutrition. I'm just simply using this as an example. You're going to look at the burger and go, oh, I want the burger. You're going to look at the salad and go, oh, I don't want. But if you have made a conscious, calm, rational decision to know that actually the salad is what you need to eat today, then the salad is what you need to eat today. In the same thing, you're going to wake up in the morning and go, oh, I want black coffee and a cigarette because that's what I grew up having. Oh, that's what I saw my mum having and that's what I've always had as a teenager. And You go, nope. I made a conscious decision when I was calm, when I was emotionally balanced, to have cereal or porridge or whatever it might be. I'm going to have that top-down approach. I'm going to choose my logic over my emotional decision-making process.
Short-term pleasure for...
Correct.
That's what I speak about all the time.
Correct. Now, can we then begin to learn that? Does that then become the learned behavior? Yes, it does, through repetition.
Right, that's what I was going to say.
So the process of neuroplasticity, which is how we rewire the neurons within our brain to then formulate new behaviors that then become the habits, does take repetition. Lots and lots and lots of repetition.
And it can be uncomfortable as well, can't it? Though. Well, it's going to be for a lot of people to change their habits.
Yeah. I think one of the hardest habits to change is how we behave in a romantic relationship.
Okay,
that's hard because you could meet someone and you could have this enjoyment, enjoy spending time with them, but then that voice in your head is going, you're getting like bits of cortisol because you're like, they're going to break up with me.
Freaking out.
Yeah. She hasn't replied. She hates me. She's telling all her friends what an idiot I am. I'm a mug. I want to get rid of her. Just find a reason so that you're not the bad guy. Find a reason to end this. No. I've made a conscious decision.
Yeah.
She's a good egg.
It's self-sabotage, isn't it?
Correct. But
I see this all the time with
food, right? Food, behavioral patterns. Because then that plays into another factor of it, which is again
victim mentality.
Right. Yeah. But it's people have let me down, things haven't worked out for me. That's what I'm used to. That's survival. That's safety. Okay. So it's safe to fail for me because that's what I've always known.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay.
So people will like trash their own journey because that's safe.
How can you change that with someone? Like say the top-down
approach, but wow, it's challenging. Particularly romantic relationships. You could be on the brink of the best relationship you ever had.
You go and fuck it up.
You go fuck it up. You find a reason to fall out.
Yeah.
Find a reason to fall out. And that's it, done. And like I've seen and done it myself. And I have this conversation all the time with clients. You're finding a reason to end that. Are you sabotaging this relationship? Has this person actually broken your trust? Or have you invented a reason for them to break your trust? And now you're going, right, well, that's it, I'm done. Yeah. Well, they're not the one for me. And that's hard. Doing that work on yourself is hard and it's scary because your subconscious is going, no, we want survival.
But that's the putting in the effort, isn't it?
That's the putting in the effort.
So for me, for example, I always say to people, I'm going to give them tough love. Like, I'm there for you. I'm in your corner. I'm your biggest supporter, but if you're not putting in the effort that you say you want X, whatever it is down the line, and you think the whole world's against you, you've messed up on your diet, whatever it is, and you're just accepting that, like, it's not for me, I can't, it doesn't work. You've got to have that effort to put in. You don't need the motivation. This is where I'm like, you just need to do the thing.
Yeah.
Those little steps, like you say.
Yeah.
You just need to do the thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So
then that motivation comes down the line, and then
but it's
so hard to do.
So hard to do. Like, we see this in like so many different examples. So it's not just romantic relationships. It's not just in food, in health behaviors, financial behaviors. That's a real common one. Neurotic parents and financially irresponsible parents raise neurotic and financially irresponsible children. You become an adult yourself. And then who are you going to project that onto?
Yeah.
Because now it's all about self-awareness. Because now if you're aware of that, you're aware not to project it. But if you can understand that your reactions to the world are based upon what is effectively a conversation between a part of the brain known as the amygdala, which is your fear generator, and your hippocampus, which is your emotional memory bank. The question is not, why am I choosing to do this behavior? The question is, why is my subconscious choosing for me to do this behavior? Like, what is this conversation between my fear and my memory that's making me want to do this?
Yeah. So obviously my brain's relating this back to what I do, but that's having, what I always say to people is, you might have, like, say, that burger, or you might have that donut in front of you, and you're like, yes, I want that. I always want to say, I say to people all the time, it's about the mindfulness side of things. So just take a second. Do you want it right now? Which the answer is probably yes. Obviously, you want that donut right now, or do you want what's further down the line, and what's going to support you to get there? So I think it comes down, you've got to have that mindfulness, just pause for a second. I say it to clients all the time, like, just take that second to pause. When you've got that food in the office that's in front of you, when, I don't know, your other half wants to get a takeaway, do you actually want it? Like, you do in that moment, but do you actually want it?
Right, yeah.
Pause, take that second.
I want to be interested would be, I wonder how many of your clients who really struggle with their relationship with food is actually because food was used as either a punishment or reward as a child. So you go, right,
that's interesting, isn't it?
Right. So if you behave yourself, you can have pudding.
Finish your dinner and you get ice cream.
Yeah. And so then they will then punish themselves by not eating the foods that they want, and thus opening the door to really disordered eating. Or if food was always used as a reward, so then they're associating food with reward. So every time they do something right, they feed themselves. Like with a treat, it's a treat, it's another treat. And that's just, maybe there are no good foods or bad foods. Maybe there are no treat foods. Maybe there are just foods that are going to help you get close to where you want to be with your physical health. And there are foods that are potentially going to slow that journey down a little bit. Maybe don't see them as either or. But that's, again, is that because my parents rewarded me or punished me with food that I have now created this relationship with food?
So interesting.
Right, it would be. Like, and that starts at a super young age.
Yeah, interesting. We're probably gonna have to wrap this up soon, but one more question for you, I think. What are you working on now? What's next for you?
So finish your dissertation. So that's.
I do not miss my writing a dissertation, by the way. I think mine was 12,000.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Like, why do I have to cite? Just believe me, bro.
The worst thing. I got told a couple of sites, though. You probably know about them.
Yeah.
I'll tell you after, in case of. No, they're absolutely fine. But it saved my life. I was doing it all manually. Someone said, you can just whack it into this and it'll generate it. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. But yeah, like, just believe me. Like, I just
I know.
Just believe me.
So finish dissertation.
The business is taken not like all a backseat. Like, I'm maxed out with clients, which is a great place to be in. But just at that point whereby breathe. I've just started starting a 1 day a week and a clinic on Harley Street. So as of next week, I'm actually gonna be able to say I'm a Harley Street psychotherapist.
Nice.
Wild.
Yeah.
Right, which is wild.
That's awesome.
Right, like peak of my game, which is amazing. There's now further education. Now, when I finish this master's, there's a second master's that I'm looking at in philosophy and theology.
Say what, PhD?
I think PhD is next year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm going to do another master's this time full time, and then the end of that. But I've been offered something on a PhD placement in applied neuroscience, which would be amazing. But there's also another master's that I want to do, because philosophy is just such a huge role in my life. I've in so much of my therapy, I find myself talking about Aristotle so much, talking a bit about Stoicism. I'm not a huge fan of Stoicism. Talking about Aristotle, I talk about Plato a lot, talk a little bit about Socrates. And I'm like, although we cover this, like, I really, really, really want to be like fully read into like Aristotle and Socrates and Plato. And it took me about a year, but I read the Bible. I'm not a religious guy, but I wanted to know. There's so much wisdom in there, like so much wisdom in there that and it's really interesting. Like, could be an entirely different podcast.
I feel like there's loads of it to do.
Oh, mate, yeah. Like the Bible is a book of life hacks that meant something 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? Like, don't eat this meat, don't mix this, don't do that, don't do that, don't do this, don't. It was life hacks because people just didn't know how to live their lives. It was not an easier time to be alive. People just died of hideous illnesses all the time and needed to know that there was hope. So that's the role that religion played. But there is also great wisdom in religion. Yeah. And there is great, like, fascinating, interesting things. And it's such a subjective and interesting thing to talk about that I really, really, really want to study the philosophy.
Would you write another book?
Yeah, but like
bit too soon.
yeah.
How long's it been out? Is it April?
Yes, April came out.
Cool. So I will definitely finish it after this.
Cool.
But my mind was going way too fast for it. So, which is a good thing.
Which is great.
I can implement a lot of what we've said today and everything into what I do.
Well, I love it how many people read a chunk and then find me on social media and message me and go,
speak to you about it.
Wow, what did like?
That must be such a good feeling.
Yeah, it's such a good feeling. They go, that's such an interesting.
So that's the book's everywhere, right? You can get it anywhere.
Yeah. So I went into I went into Waterstones in Oxford.
Instagram.
Yeah, so I went into one in Oxford. I was on a date and I went into it in Oxford, and they
flex.
And they sold out.
Just happened to be in there.
she said, "Oh, go and I went in, and yeah, it sold out."
Unreal.
I know, and I was like, "That's a little flex.
Yeah,
that's cool as fuck."
Yeah, take that though.
Yeah. I'll take that. And then I was in London yesterday. I was on Portobello Road. Just amazing all-you-can-eat Chinese place. I was going to pick my daughter up, and I was a little bit early.
I saw that. I did about 5 plates, didn't you?
Oh. Bro had like a 3-hour BJJ session this morning, so I needed to carb up yesterday. And so I went into great excuse. Yeah, I popped into the water station. Said, "Oh, sorry, have you got?" She said, "I'm really sorry, but we've just sold out." And I was like, "Yes,
that's so cool."
That's so. Oh yeah. So it's available in Waterstones. Yeah, it's so weirdly overwhelming when people are like adding me and saying, "I'm reading your book and I love it. What do you think to this?" Yeah. It is unreal.
So if people want to find you then, Instagram best place?
Yeah, Instagram or LinkedIn. And
you got your LinkedIn as well?
Yeah, and yeah, my website
is it James Elliot Official?
Yeah, so my Instagram is James Elliot Official.
Yeah, cool.
And then my LinkedIn is obviously James Elliot. I do have a Facebook, but that's like a safe space where my military mates can rip it out of me without having to worry about, and then but my Instagram and my LinkedIn are probably the best places to get hold of me.
Sweet. We could do this forever.
Oh, mate.
So I massively appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Maybe we'll do it again another time.
Yeah.
Yeah, love it.
Thanks, bro.
All done.
Cheers.